The research vessel Starling had been floating through the empty darkness of the Kepler system for 3 long months. The ship was small, built for science rather than war. Carrying a crew of 47 scientists, engineers, and support staff, they had come to study distant planets and search for new forms of life. None of them expected to find death waiting for them in the cold vacuum of space. Lieutenant Commander Grace Holloway stood at her station on the bridge, watching the stars drift slowly past the main view screen. She was tired. 3 months of nothing but darkness and data had worn down everyone's spirits. The initial excitement of deep space exploration had faded into routine, and routine had become boredom. Captain Samuel Bright sat in his command chair, reviewing reports on his datapad. He was a patient man, weathered by 20 years of service. With gray hair and calm eyes that had seen both the best and worst of humanity, he believed in the mission. He believed that somewhere out there, humanity would find proof that they were not alone in the universe. He was about to get his wish, though not in the way he had hoped. "Captain," said Communications Officer Danny Ortiz, his voice suddenly sharp with confusion, "I'm picking up something strange. There's a massive energy signature approximately 2,000 kilometers off our port side." Captain Bright looked up from his datapad. "Can you identify it?" "Negative, sir. It just appeared out of nowhere, like it was hiding." The words had barely left Danny's mouth when the view screen flickered and revealed the source of the energy signature. A ship materialized from the darkness, decloaking like a predator revealing itself to its prey. It was enormous, at least 10 times the size of the Starling, with a hull as black as the void around it. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing with a faint purple light. Grace felt her blood run cold. "That's not human. Red alert," Captain Bright ordered, his voice steady despite the fear that must have been crawling through his chest. "All hands to stations. Danny, open a channel. All frequencies." Danny worked his console with trembling fingers. "Channel open, sir. Unknown vessel. This is Captain Samuel Bright of the human research ship Starling. We are a peaceful scientific expedition. We mean you no harm and carry no weapons capable of threatening your ship. Please respond." Silence filled the bridge. The alien ship hung in space like a dark moon, motionless and menacing. Seconds stretched into minutes. "No response, Captain," Danny said quietly. "Keep trying. Cycle through all known communication protocols." But deep down, Captain Bright already knew that communication was not what these visitors wanted. The alien ship's weapon ports were glowing, charging with energy that promised violence. In the medical bay, 2 decks below, Dr. Megan Shaw was organizing sample containers when the red alert sounded. She was 28 years old, with brown hair tied back in a practical ponytail and eyes that still held the wonder of someone who had never lost her love of discovery. She had grown up in Kansas, surrounded by endless fields and bigger skies, and had spent her childhood dreaming of the stars. Now she was living that dream, serving as the Starling's xenobiologist. Ready to study any alien life they might encounter, she never imagined that alien life would come to study her instead. The ship shuddered violently, throwing Megan against the wall. Emergency lights flickered on as the main power failed. She could hear screaming from somewhere in the corridor, followed by the horrible sound of metal tearing. "All hands, this is the captain." Bright's voice came through the speakers, broken by static. "We are being boarded. Repeat, we are being boarded. Security teams 2 defensive positions. Everyone else, shelter in place, and the transmission cut off." Megan's heart pounded in her chest. She looked around the medical bay for anything that could serve as a weapon, but there was nothing. She was a scientist, not a soldier. Her tools were microscopes and sample kits, not guns and combat training. The door to the medical bay exploded inward. She saw them for the first time then. The creatures that would change her life forever. They were tall, nearly 7 feet, with bodies covered in dark chitinous armor that looked like it had grown from their skin rather than been worn. They had forearms, each ending in clawed hands, and their faces were nightmares of sharp angles and glowing eyes. For eyes per creature, burning with cold purple light, they moved with terrifying speed and efficiency. Megan watched in horror as they swept through the medical bay, securing every human they found. She tried to run, but one of them caught her easily, its clawed hand closing around her arm with impossible strength. "Do not resist," a mechanical voice said. One of the creatures wore a device on its chest that translated its clicking, hissing speech into words she could understand. "Resistance will result in immediate termination." Megan stopped struggling. She was smart enough to know when fighting was pointless. The battle for the Starling lasted less than an hour. The crew fought back with whatever they could find, but they were scientists and engineers facing trained warriors. When it was over, 35 humans lay dead, scattered through the corridors of their broken ship. Only 12 survived. Gathered together in the cargo bay under the watchful eyes of their captors, Megan stood among them, her arm bruised where the alien had grabbed her. She saw Captain Bright nearby, blood running from a cut on his forehead but still standing tall. Danny Ortiz was there too, along with Chief Engineer Paula Vance and 8 others, whose faces she recognized from meals in the cafeteria and conversations in the corridors. The creature with the translator device stepped forward. Its 4 eyes swept over the prisoners like a farmer examining livestock. "I am Commander Vethril of the Vethkai Dominion," it said. "Your species is unknown to us. This is interesting. We have conquered 17 worlds. We have cataloged and studied hundreds of species. But humans are new." Captain Bright stepped forward. "We are a peaceful people. We came here to explore, not to fight. If you release us, we will leave this system and never return." Vethril made a sound that might have been laughter. "You misunderstand your situation, human. You are not guests. You are not prisoners to be ransomed. You are specimens. We will study you. We will learn everything about your species. Your strengths, your weaknesses, how much pain you can endure, how long you can survive." His 4 eyes moved across the group and stopped on Megan. She felt the weight of that gaze like a physical force pressing against her chest. "That one," Vethril said, pointing at her with one clawed finger. "The female. She has something in her eyes. Defiance. Spirit. We will begin with her." 2 guards moved forward and grabbed Megan's arms. She struggled instinctively, but their grip was like iron. "No," Captain Bright shouted, trying to intervene. A guard struck him down with casual violence, sending him crashing to the floor. As they dragged her away, Megan looked back at her crewmates. She saw the horror in their eyes, the helplessness. She wanted to tell them something brave, something that would give them hope. But no words came. The last thing she heard before the cargo bay doors closed behind her was Danny Ortiz's voice, broken with grief. God help her. God was very far away. And the Vethkai did not believe in mercy. The interrogation chamber was cold. That was the first thing Megan noticed as the guards dragged her through the heavy metal doors. The temperature was low enough to raise goosebumps on her skin, low enough to make her breath come out in small clouds of mist. The Vethkai preferred the cold, she realized. It was comfortable for them and miserable for everyone else. The room was circular, with walls made of dark metal covered in strange symbols and blinking lights. In the center stood a platform with energy restraints that glowed with the same purple light as the alien's eyes. Medical equipment lined the walls, though nothing that looked familiar to Megan. These were not tools designed to heal. They were tools designed to hurt, to measure, to record. The guards lifted her onto the platform and secured her wrists and ankles in the energy restraints. The bands of light felt solid, like being gripped by invisible hands. She could not move her arms or legs at all, no matter how hard she tried. A new Vethkai entered the room. This one was different from the warriors who had captured her. It moved more slowly, more carefully, and its eyes held a curious light, rather than the cold aggression of the soldiers. It wore a white covering over its chest that Megan recognized as some kind of laboratory coat. "I am Kreshver," it said through a translator device, "Chief Science Officer of this vessel. I study new species. I learn what makes them strong and what makes them weak. I document everything." Megan's voice came out stronger than she expected. "I'm a scientist too, a xenobiologist. I study alien life. Kreshbert tilted its head, a gesture that might have indicated interest. Then you understand the importance of research. You understand that knowledge must be gained, even when the process is unpleasant. Research doesn't have to involve torture, perhaps not for your species. But the Vethkai have found that the most useful data comes from testing limits. We must know how much a species can endure, how they respond to pain, how quickly they break. Kreshver moved closer, its 4 eyes examining her like she was a specimen under a microscope. Your fleet. Where is it positioned? What are your military capabilities? Megan almost laughed despite her fear. I'm a scientist. I study microorganisms and bacteria. I don't know anything about military positions or fleet movements. I couldn't tell you even if I wanted to. Then you will serve a different purpose, Kreshver said, and there was no emotion in its translated voice. You will help us understand human limitations, the physical boundaries of your species. This data will be valuable when we eventually encounter your civilization in greater numbers. The examination began. Kreshver worked methodically, like any good scientist. It started with simple tests, measuring her vital signs, taking blood samples, recording her responses to light and sound. Then the tests became more invasive. Then they became painful. Then they became something worse than painful, something that went beyond words. Megan learned things about herself in that room. She learned that she could scream louder than she ever thought possible. She learned that there were levels of pain she had never imagined, depths of suffering that made her beg for unconsciousness. She learned that the human body could endure far more than the human mind wanted to accept. But she also learned something else, something that surprised her and maybe surprised Kreshver too. She did not break. Hours passed. The tests continued. Kreshver documented everything with scientific precision, recording her reactions, measuring her responses, noting the exact moment when each new threshold of pain was crossed. But through it all, Megan held on to something deep inside herself, a core of stubbornness that refused to shatter no matter how much pressure was applied. She thought about Kansas. She thought about the sunflower fields that stretched to the horizon, golden and beautiful under summer skies. She thought about her mother's voice singing old songs while making breakfast. She thought about the first time she had looked through a telescope and seen the stars up close. The moment when she knew she would spend her life chasing them. The Vethkai could hurt her body. They could make her scream and cry and beg. But they could not touch those memories. They could not take away who she was. Fascinating, Kreshver said, its translator conveying what might have been genuine interest. Your species has a remarkable capacity for endurance. Most subjects would have entered a catatonic state by now. Their minds would have shut down to escape the stimulation. But you remain conscious. You remain aware. Why? Megan looked at the alien through eyes swollen from tears. Her voice was barely a whisper, her throat raw from screaming. Because giving up means letting you win, and I would rather die than let you win. That can be arranged, Kreshver said simply. The tests continued for another 2 hours. Kreshvar pushed harder, curious now about where the breaking point lay. It had broken thousands of specimens from dozens of species over its long career. Every creature had a limit. Every mind had a threshold beyond which it could not function. But as the 6th hour ended, it was Megan's body that gave out before her mind did. Subject's cardiovascular system is failing, Kreshver dictated into its recording device. Heart rhythm has become erratic. Blood pressure dropping rapidly. Neural activity remains surprisingly high given the level of physical trauma. Subject appears to be fighting biological shutdown through force of will alone. Megan could feel it happening. Her heart was stuttering in her chest, each beat weaker than the last. Her vision was going dark around the edges. She was dying and she knew it. But even now, facing the end, she felt no regret about her choices. She had not broken. She had not given them the satisfaction of watching her mind shatter. That was worth something. That had to be worth something. You think you know us? She whispered to Kreshver, the words barely audible. You have studied our bodies. You have measured our pain responses. But you don't know anything about what makes us human. Enlighten me, Kreshver said, leaning closer to hear her fading voice. We don't surrender. Even when everything is lost, even when there's no hope left, we keep fighting. It's not logical. It's not rational. But it's who we are. And that's something your instruments will never be able to measure. Her heart stopped at exactly 14:37 by the ship's clock. Kreshvar checked its instruments, confirming what it already knew. Complete cessation of cardiac activity. No brain function detected. The human female was dead. Interesting specimen, it noted for the record. Showed remarkable resistance to standard interrogation protocols. Mental fortitude exceeding all previous estimates for carbon-based bipedal lifeforms. Recommend adjusting baseline expectations for future encounters with this species. It ordered the guards to remove the body and transport it to cold storage. Dissection would begin in the morning. There was still much to learn from the dead, tissue samples to collect, organs to examine. Death did not end the Vethkai's research. It simply moved it to a new phase. The guards unshackled Megan's lifeless body and carried it out of the interrogation chamber. They transported it through cold corridors to the ship's storage section, where specimens were kept at low temperatures until they could be properly examined. They placed her on a metal table in a small room lined with other specimens from other worlds. The lights dimmed automatically as they left, leaving Megan alone in the darkness, dead, gone. Finished, or so the Vethkai believed. But 37 minutes later, something impossible would happen. Something that would change everything the Vethkai thought they knew about humanity. Something that would make them fear the soft creatures they had dismissed as fragile and weak. Because Megan Shaw was not finished fighting. Not even close. The storage room was silent, except for the soft hum of refrigeration units keeping the specimens cold. Bodies from 17 different worlds lay on metal tables throughout the room, each one tagged and catalogued, waiting for dissection. The Vethkai were thorough. They wasted nothing. Even the dead had secrets to reveal. Trellick was a junior technician assigned to specimen preparation. It was not glamorous work, but someone had to do it. He entered the storage room 37 minutes after the human female had been placed there, carrying his tools and datapad, ready to begin the preliminary work before Kreshvar arrived for the full dissection. He found her on table 7. She looked peaceful in death, which was unusual. Most specimens showed expressions of terror or pain frozen on their faces. But this human looked almost serene, as if she were merely sleeping. Trellick set down his tools and began scanning her body with his instruments. Standard procedure. Record the baseline readings before making any incisions. He noted the lack of cardiac activity, the absence of brain function, the falling body temperature. Everything was normal. Everything was as expected. Then the body sat up. Trellick stumbled backward so fast that he crashed into the table behind him, sending instruments clattering to the floor. His mandibles clicked in alarm, a sound of pure instinctive fear that his species made only when facing something their minds could not process. The human's eyes opened. They were different somehow, deeper, as if something vast and unknowable had looked into them and left a mark. She looked around the room slowly, taking in her surroundings, and then she looked down at her own hands. Impossible, Trellick managed to say, his translator turning his clicks and hisses into words. You were dead. The readings confirmed complete biological termination. No cardiac activity. No neural function. You were dead. Megan Shaw flexed her fingers. She could feel them again. She could feel everything again. The pain from the torture was still there, but distant now. Like an echo of something that had happened to someone else long ago. I was dead. She agreed, her voice strange to her own ears. Rougher, changed. Remember it. I remember the darkness. I remember floating in nothing, being nothing. She turned to look at Trellick, and the alien technician took another step backward. And then I remembered who I was. What I was, and I decided I wasn't finished yet. That is not possible, Trellick insisted. But his voice was shaking. Death is final. It is the one, absolute, in all the universe. No species returns from death. Not naturally. Not without advanced technology or intervention. Megan smiled, and there was something terrible in that smile. Something that spoke of dark places visited and battles fought in realms beyond physical existence. Maybe that's true for other species? Maybe that's been true for every world you've conquered. But humans are different. She swung her legs off the table and stood. Her body protested, muscles screaming, bones aching, but she forced it to obey. She had gone somewhere far away and come back. Compared to that journey, physical pain meant nothing. Trellick hit the alarm. Within minutes, the storage room was filled with Vethkai. Guards with weapons drawn, scientists with scanning equipment, officers shouting orders in their clicking language, and pushing through them all came Kreshfer, chief science officer who had personally documented her death. He stopped when he saw her standing there. His 4 eyes blinked in what might have been the Vethkai equivalent of shock. "I recorded your time of death myself," he said. "I verified it with 3 separate instruments. Your heart stopped. Your brain activity ceased. You died." "Your records are accurate," Megan replied. "I did die. I felt my heart stop. I felt myself fade away into darkness. There was nothing there. No light, no warmth, just emptiness." She met his gaze without flinching. "But I didn't stay there. I fought my way back." "Fought your way back," Kreshfer repeated. "Death is not a battle. It is a biological proc. Once the body ceases to function, consciousness ends. This is basic science. Maybe your science doesn't know everything." A young officer pushed forward, weapon raised. "We should kill it again. Permanently this time. Incinerate the body." Kreshfer raised a hand to stop him. Despite his confusion, his scientific curiosity was overwhelming his fear. "No, this is unprecedented. We must study this. We must understand how it happened." "There's nothing to understand," Megan said. "I'm human. We don't give up. We don't surrender. Not to enemies. Not to pain. Not even to death itself." "That is not an explanation. That is sentiment. Now let me give you an explanation you might understand." Megan stepped forward and every guard in the room tensed, but she did not attack. She simply spoke, and something in her voice commanded attention. "Humans evolved on a world that tried to kill us constantly. Ice ages that should have frozen us. Diseases that should have wiped us out. Predators bigger and stronger and faster than us. We survived all of it. Not because we were the strongest or the smartest, but because we refused to accept defeat." She was walking now, moving slowly among the Vethkai, and none of them stopped her. They were frozen, caught between training and something older. Something primitive. Fear. Over thousands of generations, that refusal became part of us, written into our very being. When a human is pushed to the edge, when everything seems lost, something inside us wakes up. Something that says no. Not today. Not like this. I will not accept this ending. She stopped in front of Kreshver. The scientist towered over her armed guards surrounding them both, yet somehow she was the one who seemed dangerous. "I died on your table. I know I did. But in that darkness, I found that voice inside me, the voice that every human carries. And I listened to it. I held on to it. And I dragged myself back into the world through nothing but pure, stubborn will." "Will is not a physical force," Kreshver said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "Isn't it? You've conquered 17 worlds. You've studied hundreds of species. Tell me, Kreshver, how many of them have you seen do what I just did?" Silence. The question hung in the cold air of the storage room. "None," Kreshver finally admitted. "In all my years of research, I have never observed spontaneous resurrection without technological intervention." "Then maybe it's time to update your research." The guards looked to Kreshver for orders. Should they restrain her? Kill her? Study her? They had protocols for everything, but there was no protocol for this. There was no standard procedure for dealing with a dead specimen that refused to stay dead. Kreshver made a decision. Take her to a holding cell. Maximum security. I want full monitoring at all times. Every sensor we have trained on her constantly. If she shows any unusual activity, I want to know immediately." As the guards moved to escort her away, Megan offered no resistance. She had made her point. She had shown them something that would spread through this ship like fire. The soft creatures, the fragile humans. One of them had died and come back, and if one could do it, perhaps others could too. "Kreshver," she said as they led her toward the door. "You should tell your commander something." "What?" "My people will come for us. And when they do, they'll do whatever it takes to get us back. Even if it seems impossible, even if it looks like suicide, they will come. 5 prisoners are not worth the resources required for a rescue mission."
Again.
Megan smiled again, that terrible smile that spoke of darkness overcome. "That's because you don't understand us. To you, we're specimens, data points. But to humans, every single life matters. Every person is worth fighting for, worth dying for, worth coming back from the dead for." She let them lead her away, leaving Kreshver standing in the storage room surrounded by specimens from 17 conquered worlds. Dead specimens. Specimens that had stayed dead when they were killed, for the first time in his long career. The chief science officer of the Vethkai Dominion felt something he had never experienced before. Doubt word spread through the Vethkai warship like a disease. Soldiers whispered to each other in corridors. Scientists debated in laboratories. Even the lowest maintenance workers knew the story by the end of the day. The human female who had been tortured to death had returned to life 37 minutes later, impossible, unnatural, terrifying, in the holding cells where the surviving human crew members were kept. The whispers reached them too. Guards who had once looked at them with contempt now watched them with something closer to fear. The clicking of their language took on nervous tones. They kept their distance. Captain Samuel Bright sat in his cell with communications. Officer Danny Ortiz and Chief Engineer Paula Vance, the 3 of them had been placed together. Perhaps because the Vethkai did not care about separating prisoners, or perhaps because they wanted to observe how humans behaved in groups. Danny pressed himself against the energy barrier that served as their door, trying to hear what the guards were saying. His translation skills were limited, but he caught fragments, words that sounded like death and return and impossible, repeated over and over. "Something's happening," he said. "They're scared of something." "Maybe help arrived," Paula suggested, but there was little hope in her voice. They all knew how far they were from human space. Rescue would take weeks if it came at all. The cell door opened, and Kreshver entered with 4 armed guards. The chief science officer looked different than he had before, less confident. His 4 eyes moved constantly, as if expecting something unexpected to happen at any moment. "Your species," he said, without greeting. "What are you?" Captain Bright stood slowly, his body still aching from the beating he had received when Megan was taken. "We're human. Just human. You already know this. Now something happened that should not be possible. The female we took for examination, she died. I verified it personally. Complete cessation of all biological function. And then she returned." Danny and Paula exchanged looks of shock. Captain Bright felt something cold move through his chest. "Megan, Dr. Shaw, she's alive? She should not be. No species simply returns from death without intervention. We have conquered races with regenerative abilities that can regrow limbs. We have studied creatures that can enter states of hibernation indistinguishable from death. But once true death occurs, once the brain ceases all activity, there is no return. This is fundamental. This is certain." Kreshver's voice carried something that might have been frustration. "Yet your female died and returned. Explain this." Captain Bright was silent for a moment. He was thinking about all the stories he knew. Stories of soldiers who should have died from their wounds but kept fighting. Stories of mothers who lifted impossible weights to save their children. Stories of explorers who survived conditions that should have killed them 10 times over. He had always thought those stories were exaggerations. Now he wondered. "I don't know if I can explain it," he said finally. "But I can try to help you understand, then speak. Humans evolved on a planet called Earth. It's a harsh world. Not the harshest in the galaxy, probably, but harsh enough. We had ice ages that covered half the planet in frozen death. We had diseases that killed millions. We had predators that saw us as food. By all logic, we should have gone extinct 100 times over. Yet you survived. You more than survived. We thrived. We spread across our entire planet. We developed technology. We reached for the stars. Captain Bright stepped closer to Kreshver, and the guards tensed but did not stop him. Do you know why? Because somewhere in our evolution, we developed something that defies logic. A stubborn refusal to accept defeat. When everything tells us to give up, something inside us says no. Stubbornness is not a biological mechanism for reversing death. Maybe not in the way your science understands it. But humans have done impossible things throughout our history. We've survived injuries that should have been fatal. We've recovered from diseases that should have killed us. We've walked out of disasters that had no survivors. Captain Bright's voice grew stronger. We don't know why. We don't understand the mechanism, but we know it's real. We've seen it too many times to deny, Paula Vance spoke up, her engineering mind working through the problem. Maybe it's not supernatural. Maybe human consciousness is more resilient than your instruments can measure. Maybe in those 37 minutes, some part of Dr. Shaw never truly stopped. Some deep survival mechanism that kept going even when everything else shut down. We monitored her continuously, Kreshver said. There was no brain activity, no electrical impulse of any kind. Then maybe consciousness isn't just electrical impulses, Danny said quietly. Maybe there's something more. Something your instruments don't know how to detect. Kreshver was silent. The concept of something beyond measurement, beyond scientific understanding, was difficult for his species to accept. The Vethkai believed that everything could be quantified, cataloged, and controlled. That belief had made them conquerors, but now they faced something that challenged the foundation of their worldview. There is another thing you should understand, Captain Bright said. When Dr. Shaw was taken, she was just one of 47 crew members. Just one person. But to us, she matters as much as anyone else. Every human life has value. Every person is worth fighting for. This is inefficient, Kreshver said. Resources should be allocated based on value to the collective. Risking much to save few is illogical. Maybe, but it's who we are. And that's why I know with absolute certainty that help is coming. Your nearest military installation is weeks away at maximum speed. We monitored your distress signal. No response was received before we disabled your communications. Doesn't matter. Someone will notice we're missing. Someone will come looking. And when they find us, they will do whatever it takes to bring us home. As if in answer to his words, an alarm began to sound throughout the ship. A Vethkai officer's voice echoed through the corridors, clicking rapidly in their language. Kreshver's head snapped toward the cell door, his four eyes widening. What is it? Captain Bright asked. Kreshver did not answer immediately. He listened to the announcement, and with each passing second, his expression changed. Confusion gave way to disbelief, and disbelief gave way to something else. Something that looked very much like fear. Ships, he said finally. 5 vessels have entered the system. They bear the same markings as your research ship. How? Danny asked. We're weeks from any human base. But they are approaching at attack speed. Kreshvar looked at the human prisoners with new eyes. You said help would come. You sounded certain. Did you know this would happen? Captain Bright smiled. It was the first time he had smiled since the Vethkai boarded his ship. I didn't know, but I believed. And sometimes, belief is enough. Another announcement came through the speakers. More ships detected. The human vessels were not slowing down. They were accelerating. Your ships are outnumbered and outgunned, Kreshver said. We are a Vethkai warship. We have destroyed fleets larger than this, then destroy them. If you can. There was no threat in Captain Bright's voice. No bravado. Just quiet confidence. The confidence of a man who had seen humans do the impossible before and expected to see it. Again, Kreshver turned and left the cell without another word. The guards followed, sealing the door behind them. Through the energy barrier, the human prisoners could hear the sounds of a ship preparing for battle. Running feet. Shouted orders. The hum of weapons charging. Captain Bright sat down heavily on the bench that served as his bed. Danny and Paula gathered close. "Is it true?" Paula asked. "Did Megan really come back from the dead?" "That's what he said." "How is that possible?" Captain Bright thought about it for a long moment. Then he shrugged, a very human gesture that conveyed acceptance of things beyond understanding. "We're human," he said simply. "We don't always know how we do the things we do. We just do them." Outside, the stars were filling with ships. Human ships. Coming to bring their people home, no matter what stood in their way. And somewhere on this alien warship, a woman who had died and returned was waiting. Knowing that the real battle was about to begin, Commander Lucas Perry of the destroyer Artemis had been hunting for the Starling for 18 hours. The research vessel's emergency beacon had led them on a winding chase. Through 3 star systems before they finally caught the signal's origin point, when the massive HFY warship appeared on his view screen, he felt his stomach drop. "That's a dreadnought class," his tactical officer reported, voice tight with controlled fear. "Weapon systems beyond anything in our database. Shields that could withstand sustained bombardment for hours. Sir, that ship could take on our entire fleet and win." Lucas stood at the center of his bridge, hands clasped behind his back. He was 43 years old, with gray streaks in his black hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. He had lost friends to space. He had watched ships burn. He knew exactly what they were up against. "The Starling's crew is on that ship," he said quietly. 47 people. Scientists and engineers. People who signed up to explore, not to fight. "Sir, with respect, we can't win this engagement. The math doesn't work. We're 5 ships against a dreadnought." "I know the math." Lucas turned to face his bridge crew. They were young, most of them. Bright faces full of fear and determination in equal measure. "I also know that somewhere on that ship, our people are waiting for us. Scared, maybe hurt. Definitely hoping someone is coming to help." He looked at the view screen again, at the dark shape of the alien warship hanging in space, like a predator waiting to strike. "To all hands, this is the commander. Battle stations. We're going in." The Artemis was not alone. 4 other ships had answered the emergency call. The cruisers, Defiant and Valor. The destroyer, Killback. And the medical frigate Mercy, whose captain had insisted on joining the rescue mission despite having minimal weapons. Every ship in range had come. Not because command ordered them to, but because 47 humans needed help. "Commander." Vethril watched the approaching fleet from his position on the warship's bridge. His tactical officers were already calculating firing solutions, confident in their superior firepower. This would be easy. This would be routine. 5 small ships against his dreadnought. The outcome was predetermined. "They must know they cannot win," he mused aloud. "Their sensors are surely capable of analyzing our weapon systems. They understand the disparity in force." "Perhaps they hope to negotiate," his first officer suggested. "Then why approach at attack speed? Why arm their weapons?" Vethril shook his head, a gesture he had learned from studying other species. "No, they intend to fight. This is not logical. Should we hail them? Offer them the opportunity to withdraw? No. Let them come. Let them throw themselves against us. It will provide useful data about human tactical capabilities." The battle began moments later. The Artemis fired first, launching a barrage of missiles that streaked across the void toward the HFY warship. The dreadnought's shields absorbed the impacts easily, flashing with brief light but showing no sign of damage. Return fire came immediately, a lance of purple energy that carved through space with deadly precision. "Evasive action," Lucas shouted, and the Artemis rolled hard to starboard. The energy beam passed close enough to scorch their hull, but did not strike home. The other human ships were engaging now, spreading out to attack from multiple angles. Their weapons pounded against the dreadnought's shields, each impact doing minimal damage, but forcing the HFY to divide their attention. It was like watching dogs harass a bear. They could not kill it, but they could make it work for its meal. On the HFY warship, Megan watched the battle through a viewing port in her cell. She had been moved to a more secure location after her resurrection, surrounded by guards who watched her constantly. But they could not stop her from watching the stars fill with fire. "They came," she whispered. "I knew they would." The guard nearest to her heard and responded through his translator. "They will die. All of them. Your ships cannot penetrate our shields. Watch." The human ships were taking damage. The Defiant lost its primary engine to a direct hit and began to drift. The Valor's shields failed, leaving it vulnerable. One by one, the small human vessels were being torn apart by the superior Vethkai firepower. But they did not retreat. They did not flee. They pressed their attack with the desperation of people who had already accepted death and decided it was worth the price. Then the Keelback did something. Insane Commander Angela Ross of the Keelback had served in the Navy for 20 years. She had never lost a crew member under her command. When she saw the Dreadnought's main weapon charging for a killing shot on the already damaged Defiant, made a decision that would be remembered for generations. "All hands, abandon ship. Get to the escape pods." "That's an order, Commander. What are you doing?" "What needs to be done? Go. Now." She waited until the last escape pod had launched. Then she aimed her crippled destroyer directly at the Vethkai Dreadnought's main weapon array and pushed the engines to maximum. The impact was devastating. The Keelback struck the weapon array at full speed, its hull crumpling like paper, but transferring all of its momentum into the enemy ship. The Dreadnought's main guns exploded in a cascade of purple fire. Secondary explosions rippled across its hull as power conduits overloaded. On the Vethkai bridge, chaos erupted. Damage reports flooded in from every section. The main weapons were gone. Shield generators were failing. And the human ships, the tiny human ships that should have been destroyed by now, were still fighting. "This is not possible," Vethril said, staring at his tactical display. "They sacrificed a ship. An entire vessel. To disable our weapons, Commander. What are your orders?" Vethril had conquered 17 worlds. He had broken countless species. He had never faced an enemy willing to destroy themselves just to create an opening. Before he could respond, alarms sounded throughout the ship. Hull breaches on multiple decks. Human boarding parties had penetrated their defenses while they were distracted by the Keelback sacrifice. Lucas Perry led the boarding team personally. He crashed through the corridors of the alien warship with 20 Marines at his back. Fighting through every resistance with a fury born of desperate hope, they had one mission: find the prisoners, bring them home. He found Captain Bright and the others in the holding cells on Deck 7. The guards had fled, either to fight the invaders or simply because they no longer knew what to do. The humans were alone, still locked behind energy barriers. "Captain Bright," Lucas said, working the alien controls to release them. "Commander Lucas Perry, Destroyer Artemis. Sorry we're late." Bright stepped out of his cell, his legs unsteady, but his eyes bright with relief. "You came. Against that thing out there, you actually came. 47 people. Every one of them worth fighting for." Lucas handed him a spare weapon. "Can you walk?" "I can do more than walk. But there's someone else. Dr. Megan Shaw. She's being held separately. We'll find her. Let's move." They found Megan 2 decks up, still surrounded by guards who refused to abandon their post. The firefight was brief. When it was over, Lucas approached the cell where she waited, watching him with those strange eyes that had seen the other side of death. "Dr. Shaw, I'm here to take you home, I know." She smiled, and despite everything she had been through, there was warmth in it. "I knew someone would come." The evacuation was chaotic, but successful. The human ships, battered and barely functional, managed to recover all 12 surviving crew members plus the Marines who had rescued them. The Vethkai warship, crippled by the Keelback's sacrifice, was unable to pursue. As the Artemis limped toward safety, Megan stood at a viewing port and watched the alien dreadnought shrink behind them. Kreshver was still on that ship. Vethril was still on that ship. All the creatures who had hurt her, studied her, killed her, they were being left behind. Commander Perry joined her at the port. "Medical wants to examine you. They say there's something unusual in your readings." It probably is. Megan did not turn away from the view. I died back there. I actually died. And then I came back. The crew is talking about it. Some of them think it's a miracle. Others think you were never really dead. What do you think? Perry considered the question. I think humans have been doing impossible things since we climbed down from the trees. I think there's something in us that doesn't know how to quit. And I think whatever happened to you on that ship, it's just proof that we're stranger and stronger than even we realize. Megan finally turned to look at him. The Vethkai have conquered 17 worlds. They've broken hundreds of species. They thought they understood us. And now they know they don't. And that terrifies them more than any weapon ever could. Weeks later, Kreshverse submitted his final report to the Vethkai High Command. He documented everything. The capture, the interrogation, the death, the resurrection. The battle that should have been easy but nearly destroyed them. The humans who sacrificed everything to save 12 prisoners. At the end of his report, he included a recommendation. Species designation. Human. Classification. Extreme threat. Recommended action. Do not engage. Repeat. Do not engage. They do not fight like other species. They do not think like other species. They do not die like other species. Until we understand them better, all contact should be avoided. The High Command reviewed the report. They reviewed the footage. They saw the human ships throwing themselves against impossible odds. They saw the destroyer sacrifice itself without hesitation. They saw a dead woman open her eyes and stand up. The recommendation was approved. Unanimously, humanity was added to the list of species marked do not engage. They had conquered 17 worlds. They would not conquer Earth. And somewhere among the stars, Megan Shaw returned to her life. She continued her research. She studied alien microorganisms and dreamed of new discoveries. But sometimes late at night, she would look up at the stars and remember those 37 minutes in the darkness. She had died. She had faced the void, and she had chosen to come back, because that is what humans do. That is what they will always do, and that is why the universe learned to fear them.